Hello, my name is Gabby Richardson, and you are listening to The Nexus of Narratives, where we use stories to bring people together across belief systems. New episodes are released every Monday on your favorite podcast platform, where I have a conversation with a guest about an obstacle that they faced in their life that invited them to take a look at their own beliefs, whether about themselves or about the world around them. We talk about how those beliefs were formed and how formative moments shape how we interact with the world. The Nexus of Narratives is what we will uncover through this story exploration. It's the common thread that unites all of us, no matter what our beliefs are. And if you're an avid podcast listener, you know the deal. Please take a moment on the platform where you are listening to follow, rate, and review. Those little acts go a long way in ensuring that this important work reaches more people. Take a look at the show notes for information on this episode, how to connect with today's guest, and any content warnings. So if there's anything that you want to be aware of, that's the place to find it. So without any further delay, I look forward to sharing this story with you, and I'll see you again here on your feed next Monday or sooner on Patreon. Hello, and welcome to the Nexus of Narratives. Sallyann, I'm so grateful to share space with you, and thank you for spending your time here with me.
So, my honor. What a great way to spend a day.
Yeah. And so before we dive right into it, if you were to just briefly share a little bit about yourself, how would you like to introduce yourself?
I am the main provider for Heaven's Light Wellness, and I'm an intuitive and holistic healer. So I have been working with energy for 40 years. I'm a Reiki master and teacher, and I'm an intuitive. So clairvoyant, psychic medium, whatever makes you comfortable, but it all comes from above in a good and blessed way.
Very, very cool. Yeah. Thank you for that. And yeah, let's hop straight into the good stuff. So what story or stories did you come to share here on Nexus of Narratives?
Oh, well, there's so many, right? Like life is so amazing. And as a community of humans that never know what our next steps are, I guess my overriding thing is to have faith in the universe, because usually it's working in your favor. So recently I started saying she's working in your favor when I'm referring to the universe, because I feel like, I don't know, the energy is compassionate and loving, and not that male energy isn't, but you know, sometimes more of the nurture happens on some female energy. Not that men can't have female energy, but yeah, I know that sounds really woo-woo. Like as a corporate woman, right? I started in the corporate world. So as a corporate woman, that sounds pretty woo-woo to me. But yeah, I've had this beautiful transition over the last 10 years to be able to be here today and do my heart work, I call it, 100% of the time.
That's amazing. So if you were to kind of trail through, whether it be like a moment or a series of events that you felt were really pivotal moments in your life that you took a look at your own beliefs, what is an instance or a set of instances that stand out to you?
You know what? I was very blessed, really brought up in a household that really supported me and my beliefs and, kind of who I wanted to be. When I was 15, sophomore in high school, my parents moved me from New York to Arizona in the middle of nowhere. Now it's the center of Scottsdale, but at the time it was the middle of nowhere. And really, they kind of let me find my own way. So I was able to go to college when I was in high school, which was unheard of at the time. And I picked where I wanted to go to school. And then after I went to college, I moved back to New York City. Literally was out of college 2 weeks and said, I need to go home. And I still call New York City my home, even though I've been in Arizona now 23 years. And was really empowered by them to live like the life that I wanted or the life that I needed. And nowadays I really look at that and say, it's the doors that opened for me, because I believe that we are given these doors of opportunities for us to walk through to learn lessons. And I just kind of fling them open and walk through them. But because I had a great support system, I never felt like I could fail, because I always had this family behind me that would support me. They may say, "Ugh, you're crazy," but hey, we'll support you. So I have all these beautiful memories of really living a really beautiful and full life in New York, and very business oriented. Worked for a large advertising agency, worked for a fashion brand, moved my way up, was vice president of promotions and director and marketing and for huge brands. Really loved it. And then decided to move to Arizona when my kids were young, because I thought it was a better way of life here. I really didn't want my kids drunk at 14, right? Because that's just what was the trend back then. And I wanted them to live an easier life. So we moved to this wonderful town, and I call it Disneyland here. And then started working again. So I had this great opportunity to change my career again and be close to home and watch my kids. And then 8 years ago, everything changed. Everything that I knew things were, shall I say, uncomfortable. I knew that I was on the precipice of something like this big change. And I remember I went into the vice president for the company I was working, and I said, "It's time to come up with an exit plan." And she was like, "What does that mean?" And I said, "I told you 10 years ago when I took this job, I'll do it till it's not fun anymore." And it's not fun anymore. And they really let me recreate, be really philanthropic, do amazing, amazing things that I manifested and had happen. Worked with lots of organizations. And within 2 months, I was gone. Like, I had left that world really unsure of where it was going. And I just thought I needed a new job, right? I just thought I just need a new change. I want to do something else. And we laugh because everyone's like, "You're the most employable person there is. You're going to have a job in a day." And I seriously thought I'd have a job in a day, right? Why not? I knew the mayor. I knew the vice president of, Clear Channel. I knew all these people that I was friends and colleagues with, and then couldn't get an interview. And Gabrielle, I was like, what? What's happening? Okay, something else is going on here. And that's because I tried to stay in that marketing world, and that's not really where I was supposed to be. So I was doing some Reiki healing work on a friend, and she said, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I'm kind of frustrated. I'm sad. I don't know what's happening. I'm not used to this part of my life going this way." And I realized that there were 13 job opportunities that I didn't get. 13's like my lucky number. I actually have a tattoo of it. I was married on a 13. It wasn't supposed to be that month. My son was born 2 weeks early on a 13. My daughter was born 2 days late on a 13. So 13 is my lucky number. And then going through all these things, realizing, oh my God, 13 opportunities. I'm not looking at something right. And my girlfriend really just said to me, "Stop looking. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing." And I looked at her. I was like, what? And there I was doing healing work on her, which was really intrinsic to who I am. And again, I call it my heart work. And I just kept doing it. So it was funny because I went to order business cards later that week, and it was exactly 1 year to the date that I designed that business card. It was just sitting in the folder for over a year. No, exactly a year. So it was just this wonderful message that I decided again to walk through the door. And I've been super blessed. It's really different than the corporate world, like working 80 hours a week and multitasking crazy things and creating really big opportunities. Now I just get to do that for myself and my clients. So I'm just really, really blessed. I mean, every day is a surprise. Now, there's some days when you're like, oh my God, what did I do? But for the most part, I mean, I've manifested a whole bunch of things. I have a #1 international bestseller that's been blessed by Tony Robbins. We have 2 other books in the works that are out. I have thousands of clients all over the world, and to be able to see their reaction and their change once they've gotten the messages they need is like, it's the thing that makes me effervescent, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, did they feel better? They feel unstuck. They feel like they can move forward. And that's really what I've always wanted to be able to give to other humans. So yeah, kind of a long story to the short question, but
that is not a long answer to the question at all. No, that's wonderful. So I'm curious, because you'd shared how you first started in this like lineup of kind of corporate life, and then decided like I wasn't going to do this when it was no longer fun. And so do you feel like you had a certain belief about yourself or your role in the world or what you were supposed to do before this moment where your friend was like, no, this is what you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah, great question. So I'm 60 this year. So I was brought up at a time when you got married, you had kids, you had a job. Like my mother was very, you don't have to be a housewife, like you should have a job. And I worked in the advertising world in New York City. It was a big boy network, right? It was very man driven. And I was able to succeed and had like men cheer me on. So I was blessed to have those people in my life. And so I think that as I went through my career, I probably changed what I thought I should do, but I also listened to what I thought I should change, right? So, I mean, I started as a secretary right out of college. I mean, there were guys that I'm going to say weren't as smart as me or didn't have a high GPA as I did that were, account executives making more money than I did. I'll never forget. Oh my God, it's the sweetest thing. So my executive vice president, he promoted me from secretary. I had to be in the job 13 months. 13 months of the day. I remember he calls me into his office and he said, I'm going to promote you. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. He goes, no, you've earned it. And I'm going to give you a raise because I think the people that work for me should be able to afford meat once a week. And I was like, okay.
Wow. What a generous boss you had.
He knew that he's like, you're not getting paid enough for what you did. And I learned so much from that position and that job and was able to really move up and move around and had a lot of respect. So I loved it. They let me be me, right? So I guess that's part of it is I felt it filled all my buckets. They saw me, they let me be creative and, wild in my thought, but then bring it down because it was the largest advertising agency at the time. And I actually worked on the largest account they had on. So I had great opportunities. So, my desire to be good for the client, appreciate my bosses and the people I worked with and be a good human and, be fair. That has, I don't think, ever changed from me, but the way that I did it ultimately changed. even after I had children, it was my kids first. And, you know, I know there were some, I'm going to say, you know, bosses that didn't want to hear that. You know, I worked for one job before I had my oldest, and he said, I just don't want a yes man. I was like, okay, I'm your girl, because I'm not going to yes you to death. I'm going to tell you what I think. You're paying me. I'm educated. You want me here. And I remember, I think I was there like 2 weeks, and I was like, he gave me like the face, you know, when we were talking about something. I was like, you didn't want a yes man. That's what you got. I'm not going to tell you yes just to make you happy. I'm going to tell you what you need to do to propel your business. And he respected that. And I was able to, you know, have great experiences there, having my children and working next to these humans that taught me a lot and made me want to be a good employee because I felt like I was family. And even at the last space, so when I moved here to Arizona, I probably didn't have a job for an external job. I mean, I started community theaters and PTAs and new schools because we were in a new area, was still very, very involved, but didn't have a paid job for, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years. And then I said, this opportunity came up to run an entire outlet mall. And I was like, yeah, I could do this in my sleep, and had a great time, like did that job for almost 10 years. And so how the transition happened was, it just, I don't know if fun is really the right word. I mean, I always thought I loved going to work. I had a ball when I was at work. I had lots of flexibility. You know, it's like, oh, got to go pick up my kids. I'll see you in a half hour. You know, coming in and out, working late or coming in early, or, you know, you do what you have to do when you're understaffed or overstaffed or however it was. And then when things started to like shift within the company, definitely the industry changed when it came to shopping and, but it was no longer a challenge, right? So that's where my fun is creating a win-win situation, developing a new strategy, you know, working within the confines and the opportunities that are there and making it work, still be successful. And when those things just kind of felt like drudgery, I was like, you know, that's not my skill set. My skill set is to create things out of nothing. So that's when it stopped being fun. And so I guess my, you know, the feeling of who I am never really changed. I still want to do really amazing things for humans and, you know, feel like I'm giving the world something positive. I always want to leave a good mark in the world, not a negative, you know, dark mark on the world. So that still happens. And that's why I'm like so grateful in what I do. And I have clients around the world. So hopefully I'm creating little bright spots for humans and the people next to them. So this way they can continue to shine, right? Because if you're in a really great mood, you give the guy next to you permission to be in a really great mood is kind of like my mentality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. And if someone's walking around with a big old cloud over their head, then it kind of darkens and dampens everything else around them too.
Right. Yeah. You know, I say if you could live your best life, you're giving everybody else permission to live their best life, because the world doesn't always give that to us. I know that I was blessed growing up. I know I had a supportive family. Not everybody lives in that world. And we don't know that until we know it, right? When you go to college, you're like, doesn't everybody live the same life I have? No. You know, you go to your first job and you're like, wait a minute, you don't eat dinner together every single night? No, because that's not how everybody else lives their life. So it's really a beautiful study in humanness and sociology and culture that can really bring you to this place of understanding and helping others. If you can have like the bandwidth to let them be who they have to be.
So what was that like for you to start to open your eyes to the different experiences of other people who didn't have it like you did?
It was actually when I was like really, I will say the most astounding thing was it was late in life. I would say it was like 48 or 50. And like a vice president from another department said to me, "But Sallyann, don't you understand? You don't think like everybody else?" And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you don't think like anybody else." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's why I feel different. And it's true, I don't think like anybody else. And I realized through my career, there's only two men that I have worked with, two people that actually think like me. And both of them I used to call work husbands. And it's kind of funny because we would talk without talking. It's like, oh, I know exactly what you're thinking, right? Like we would understand where we were going or how we were doing it to get there. And sometimes you have to play good cop, bad cop, right? For the other people in front of you to know that. But when I realized that the way that I thought was unique to me and not the norm, it also helped me a lot going into that acceptance part of, I'm not like the strange one. I am, right? But it's a gift because I just think differently. So I was able to realize, because I used to say, doesn't everybody know that? Doesn't everybody think that way? I don't understand. And then when I realized, no, they really don't. Then it was much easier to have patience for someone else or to understand, oh, why don't they think this way? I want to know, right? Instead of my way is the right way, it was more like, oh, tell me how you look at it. Tell me what that makes you feel like. Tell me what are the words you may use, right? And then that's exciting. It's exciting to get different point of views.
And do you feel like that's kind of changed your relationships to approach things like that?
Yeah, I think 100%, right? If you don't put like these parameters on how it should be, you really get to like open your life up to how it could be, how it is, right? Like living present instead of, no, you need to act this way. Instead, it's like, oh my gosh, oh, is that your truth? Maybe you don't say, is that your truth? I mean, I do, but in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, that's so fascinating. I've made like deeper connections with friends that I've had in ways that I never thought would come about, especially where we're different in mindset, where we're different in some what we would think core beliefs. And then I would sit down. There's one friend particularly, and we would sit down. I'm like, tell me why you think that way. Tell me why that's important. I'm so interested. Don't you think A, B, or C? And he'd be like, yeah, of course A, B, or C. I'm like, well, I believe A, B, or C too, but why are we like this when really we're right here in the middle? So it does help, I think, for me, and I'm going to say for the world, if you can not have to be right, but be open to what other people's opinions are, you might realize that you're actually really close to the same place. And man, that just brings love into the world, right? Instead of feeling like you're so opposite, then you can realize, wow, we're actually saying the same thing. We're just saying it differently. Again, because people have different cultures, different experiences, different words in their life. But at the end of the day, it's really what the belief is that you can dig through to understand. And I don't know, it makes you feel less lonely, less combative, more empowered, more connected, very present. It's really special. I highly encourage it for everyone to do that for themselves.
I do too. It's actually the entire purpose of this platform.
There you go.
Exactly everything about what you just said is in my spiel. Usually when I share the purpose of this podcast is like, if we could tear away all of the noise of this versus that, this is right, this is right, this is wrong, that's right. It's like, I think down at the core of it, we as people want something similar. And so long as we can approach our conversations with curiosity and compassion and love, then you kind of can't go wrong. And it'll lead to more connection, more authentic connections with people, like deeper and more meaningful relationships with people. Like exactly what you were saying. I was like, man, I didn't think we were going to go down this path for me to be like, that's the purpose of this podcast. I didn't even prime you for that.
You did not. See? Universe.
So yeah, that was just lovely. That was absolutely lovely. And it's nice to hear it from someone that's not me.
Right? There's other people wonderful in the world that think like you. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. And the not exactly like me, but to still come to a similar conclusion is really cool. Because I grew up surrounded by different beliefs and different cultures and different practices and different opinions. And so, I think it was pretty quickly shaken out of me that there was one way of thinking about things. I kind of had that combating of different beliefs between my parents for as long as I can remember. So I don't know that I ever thought anyone thought the same. So it's really cool to hear people who have different experiences, but then still come to like a similar conclusion is real cool for me.
Yeah, I love that.
Don't go anywhere just yet. We will be back with this conversation in just a moment. Thank you so much for spending your time with me here on The Nexus of Narratives. As you may know by now, it goes a long way to support the podcast by listening, following, rating, and reviewing. So if you have enjoyed the content, please take a moment to support extending the reach of this important work. While the public episodes of The Nexus of Narratives focus on the stories of our guests, how belief systems have been formed, and how to build connection, we keep the conversation going on Patreon. We've built a phenomenal community of peer connectors on Patreon who are looking to build a more compassionate world together. While I could be continuing the conversation with the guest or digesting fantastic themes with my dear friend Rowan, there is a lot of great bonus content on Patreon, including additional benefits for different tiers. Search Nexus of Narratives on Patreon or click the link in the show notes to join this exclusive community. I look forward to connecting with you there. For more information on the Nexus of Narratives, ways to listen, opportunities to connect with me, or share a story of your own, go to nexusofnarratives.org. I personally monitor that inbox, so it is a quick and simple way to connect directly with me. Whether you're a new listener or have been around for a while, I'm deeply grateful for your time and commitment to this work. Without keeping you any longer, let's get back to the story. And so how do you feel, you shared a bit about your career and kind of what that experience was like, especially starting to have this shift of your own experience and relationship to people having different opinions, but maybe still wanting the same thing at the end of the day, to the space that you're in now. Do you feel like it demands a completely different version of you? And what's that like?
That's a great question. I think that I have evolved. I don't know if I'm sure if it demands it, because I feel like it's been a choice to get where I am. I am definitely different, right? But to the core, still the same. I would say 8 years ago, before I started doing this 100% of the time, right? Because I have been doing it for 40 years. So, but 8 years ago, when this became career instead of just something I did, I would say I was a faithful human, right? Now I look at myself and I say, that version of Sallyann, she really didn't have as much faith as this version of Sallyann. I really feel that with working with angels or feeling protected or, being able to do energy work, my faith in being safe, understanding that things happen because they're supposed to happen, looking because, oh my gosh, that must be something for me to learn in this life, is a much more profound than it was before. Like I always thought, I know I'm a female, and sure, I probably can't go sleep on the beach in Mexico by myself, right? And still feel that way. But do I have fear right now? No, I have very little fear. And that is something that has creeped in over the last 8 years. I mean, yes, of course, there's like overriding things of, oh my gosh, I hope that we can all come together. And I hope that there's not war in our area. And, but I don't live every day in fear that I won't be able to eat or afford my home, or my children will be damaged, or I will be damaged. I don't live like that. I live without that fear component in my life. And I think that's pretty profound. And I do believe that comes directly from the work that I do. Because it fills my bucket. If I don't talk to a client for a couple of days, I feel a little unsteady. And then when I have clients, like if I have a full day of clients, like 6 or 8 hours of clients, I swear I come home and I feel like I'm vibrating, and my family's like, oh, look at you. I'm like, I know I'm floating, right? Because I just feel complete in a different way without like needing someone to tell me good job, or maybe feeling accomplished. I just know I'm accomplished, which isn't built on circumstance. It's built on like core belief.
Mm-hmm. And so then was there a time in your life where you didn't like believe that about yourself?
I would think, yeah, when I remember, so we moved, right? I'm a New York gal, on Long Island, went to Catholic school, and I moved to this other state that I didn't even know. I mean, literally people were like, do they have grocery stores there? And I'm like, I'm not moving to Siberia. Yes, there's grocery stores, but we moved so we could have horses, right? So we used to take our horses out in the backyard, which ultimately wound up to be a golf course, but, it was a different life like that I didn't understand. I still had a very much New York sensibility about myself, which was also great acceptance, right? Because yes, there were all cultures, there were all different color people that I went to school with. Yes, it was like Catholic school, so it was a little more structured. And then I literally wound up going to, a very privileged school district where I wasn't used to some of the kids being so, I guess, mean to others, right? I mean, I was really brought up, be nice to your neighbor. Like someone falls down, pick them up. And where I went to high school, I was like, wow, these are not all kind people, right? And that is really a lesson. Of course, that's how the world works. There's not kind people. You're not surrounded 100% by kind people. There's one or two in there because that helps us. It's the yin and yang of life, right? So you understand what kind is and what kind isn't. And I remember I was really insecure when I first moved here. Like I had tried out for cheer because I was very athletic and, in New York. And then I got here and I really got in my head. I had myself get in my head, and went all the way through the process. And right before tryouts, I was like, I can't do this. And literally girls that I didn't know, they're like, what are you doing? Because I had been training with them for weeks, and I just really got in my head and said, yeah, I don't think I can do this. Or maybe I didn't want to be that person. And so I kind of kickstarted my education differently. As I had mentioned before, I went to college while I was in high school, not something that ever really existed back then. I needed permission from my teachers and the principal, and then really came into myself when I was in college. So I will say that probably like those 2 or 3 years in high school were hard because I didn't understand who I was. I didn't understand what I could bring to myself. I did not feel empowered because at that time I was looking for others to make me feel powerful. And I don't think I believe that anymore. I think that my power comes from inside of whatever my goodness is, whatever my foundation is. It's funny, I was writing the book last year and I really didn't know where to start, but I knew what the theme was. And I started thinking and I said, I better go look at an old resume. And I started looking at my old resume and I was like, I was freaking kick ass. I'm like, okay, readdress yourself, realize who you are. And that like changed everything. It still sticks with me, especially the last year. So, it's amazing when you can look at your history and say, wow, not only did I open the doors that life presented to me so I can learn something, I flung them open, jumped through that door and said, okay, what's happening next? And I love that. I know I have good friends that are total introverts and they're horrified by some of those details, but it is the way I knew I needed to live my life, right? Because you don't always have to fling the door open. Sometimes you can just open the door, walk through, learn the lesson, see that it's wonderful on the other side, because it's always better on the other side.
Yeah, test the waters of that authenticity.
Yeah, exactly.
And see that it's not that bad.
Right? Right? Well, because it's going to keep
it's actually
coming
pretty
back.
great over here.
Exactly.
It's funny that you say that about like pulling your resume back out. When I was doing a move at one point, I was going through some boxes and an old friend of mine and I were kind of weeding through some stuff, and I pulled out this frame and it had this like award in it, and I was like, what is this? And it was a Dean's Award for research from when I was in college, and I had completely forgotten about it. I was like, wow, I forgot that I got this award. And he joked with me, he was like, Gabby, someone feels destroyed because they didn't get that award and you forgot about it. How could you? And I was like, oh, come on.
It's probably true.
It might be, it might not be. He goes, someone might have cursed your name because you got that award and they didn't. And I was like, oh, shush. But so to segue us to the same questions that I ask everyone, because this has been so wonderful. And I feel like you've already answered these questions in some kind of ways, but it's always nice to just retouch them nicely. Sure. Is for, let me start that over, is how can your story or your series of stories create connection for people who have similar experiences or similar beliefs?
I think that my stories can help others with connection by understanding that if I can do it, you can do it. Right? I'm just a normal human being. I may have a different perspective, and I do believe that a shift of perspective is everything. So I think that anyone could really do just about anything they want if they understand that they can, if they understand that even if your family isn't behind you, I bet you have a friend or one person, right, that can be your cheerleader or lift you up. So this way you can do what you know you can do. Because that's the other thing. I authentically think when we feel stuck or unhappy, it's because we're not following the things that we know our heart needs to follow.
Mm, absolutely. And I want to repeat that in different words, just in case anyone didn't catch that little magical nugget. Is I heard that as when you are not living in your own authenticity, you're like taking away from your own joy and your own fulfillment and your own purpose. Mm-hmm. Like just live into you.
Yeah.
And connection and all the greatness will follow.
100%. Right. I think that that's part of it. Is I'm going to tell everybody that listens, you have permission. I'm granting you permission to follow your heart, to follow what you need to do for yourself to bring yourself happiness. Because I think that's what's missing in the world today. We don't have permission and we're looking for it. I'm telling you, you have permission.
It's right here. The permission is here. It's in here. It's in you. I'm pointing to like my chest and my head. We are the ones who are to give ourselves permission to be ourselves, not like seeking it from someone else. This keeps on coming up. This has come up in the last few episodes that I've recorded. It reminds me of a conversation with a woman, Sabine, who was the first episode of season 3. And she had shared the pain and misery, like in some similar words, the pain and misery of not living in her authenticity so greatly outweighed the fear of what anyone might say or do to her if she lived in her authenticity. She lived in fear so long. What would people do if I showed up actually as me? What would people say? And eventually the fear wasn't enough. It was like, no, I need to be me and nothing else matters.
Yeah. You know, I will tell you, it's interesting you said that, because a couple of years ago, as much as I have this great family and I love them, I had a core disagreement with my mother, who was like my best friend, right? It was like to the core. And it really rocked me because it's not what I had expected. It wasn't what the last, 50 something years were together. And I remember my brother, who I'm really good friends with, said, you and mom need to go to therapy together so you can figure it out. And I went, no, I don't need to go to therapy. You guys need to go to therapy, because just because you have trained me to act a certain way, and I am now choosing to live in my own honesty, and I am not automatically reacting the way you think I should, this is your problem. It's not my problem. You have to choose to see me differently because I know I'm different. And he was like blown away. And it's funny because he did go into therapy because I was like, no, let me be my authentic self, right? So sometimes that happens when we step into ourselves, when we step into our truth, when we step into who we are. It makes other people uncomfortable. So you might have to remind people that, no, I know that this is who I need to be. And you might be surprised.
That's amazing. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And that comes up in all the personal development work that I do, whether for myself or being a part of classes for others, is, it's not up to me to make sure you perceive me in a different way. It's up to you to open your mind and your heart to see others and to see me differently. As long as I'm showing up as me, it's not my responsibility for how people are going to perceive me, because everyone has their own filters on the world based on their experiences, based on how they've been socialized, based on what may or may not have traumatized them. Every single one of us has a filter, and it causes us to be like judgmental of people. We have a judgment that comes on, and it's not because we're bad people. It's just our brains are efficient. They're wired to detect patterns. Like that is the purpose of our brains. It's like a survival technique to be like, oh, this thing seems to fit into that bucket. Is it harmful to me? Yes or no? So it's our responsibilities to step out of that and think bigger, because we have the capacity to do that, which is one of the most magical things about having a human brain.
Exactly. And you know what? It's the most freeing thing to reset your brain, to say, wait, I'm just going to see who shows up. I'm going to love and accept and process who shows up instead of who you're supposed to be and why I don't like you right now because you're not being who you're supposed to be. Right? Like, isn't that freeing? It's like, woohoo.
Yeah. And in the end of the day, that's just me letting me down to say, oh, you're not showing up the way you're supposed to. Like, that's my expectation letting me down. It's a trap. It's all a trap. So just don't fall into it.
Right. That's true. Don't do it.
Well, and then the second question that I have for you is, if there is anyone who can relate to any place that you were in your story, what might you say to a past version of yourself?
It's very funny because that's what the beginning of the book is. It's called Cracking the Rich Code. And it's not about money. It's about richness in life. And so I literally started to write a letter to myself. It was more like that 10 years ago. What would I say to myself on the journey of where I am now? And what I did come up with was, don't let fear stifle you. Know that you are protected and know that you can do it. It's really that moment of self-empowerment that helps there not be fear. If authentically you know, I can do this. And we all do. We know it. We just don't let it out, right? So crack open the window, let it out. So this way, authentically, you can be who you know you can be. It's a beautiful gift to yourself.
Amazing. Beautiful. And what do or did you need to feel most connected to the people around you?
I think, what do I need to be connected to the people around me? I think I need them to be present. I think I connect really well when I can feel people being present, right? So if you're playing on your computer or even if you're not looking at me, but I know that you're listening or can feel you listen, I feel connected to you. So I think a lot of it is like this emotional energy that comes in. And I don't think you have to be an intuitive to have that. Like, I think we all know if someone's present or if someone's not present, or and sometimes they can't be. That's okay too. But I think that's the easiest way for me to connect, is maybe some eyes together and, some nods of acknowledgement. So it doesn't have to be like words back, but it's just knowing that people are present around me to connect.
I hear groundedness in that too, like for the other person to be grounded and kind of solid where they're at.
Yeah. And sometimes people aren't necessarily as grounded as maybe they want to be. But I think that if they're grounded in the moment and can see the moment, that's what being present is, I guess, in my mind. It's like, wow, if I'm present, I'm here, I'm grounded in the moment, I think connection can happen, almost instantaneously. If it's with one person, if it's with 10 people, if it's with 1,000 people, like if everybody all feels like they're in the same moment, they're all grounded together, they are present, it's like a phenomenal energetic hug, right? We're all in here together. Yeah. Let's connect and move forward. It's beautiful.
That is beautiful. Yes. Lovely. And last but not least, where I like to get a little cheeky, is if someone's listening and they're like, my goodness, this is just bonkers. I don't believe a single thing that they're saying. What on earth is happening? How can your story create connection for people who have different experiences and different beliefs?
Well, I will say I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot. I think it's just up to them to decide what works for them. And I'm going to say, I even called myself woo-woo at the very beginning of this, right? Because I am a corporate girl who's doing a woo-woo career right now. I have changed that. And I see lots of people like that. I had a client come in to my office, and I said, okay, hey, great. Why are you here? And he's like, well, my girlfriend told me about this. He goes, but I'm a manly man. And I was like, uh-huh. And he goes, but I just need to be happy. And he understands that he needs to be happy. So even though I saw his girlfriend, 6 months ago, she mentioned it and it kind of was brewing with him until he decided, like the story of your friend that said that, it wasn't worth it to be unhappy anymore. He decided that I was willing to walk through the door because this presented to him, even though he's a manly man. But he wants to be happy. So I would say, listen to yourself, right? Listen to who you are and decide what could make you happy. And you don't have to believe everything I say. But if something resonates, then take the crumb that resonates and love the crumb. You don't have to eat the whole cake.
That's beautiful. Love the crumb. You don't have to have it all. Just take what you like.
Yeah.
And that's perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and your vulnerability and sharing. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I'll certainly include information in the show notes, but how can anyone who's listening find you or your book or get in touch?
So everything is on Heaven's Light Wellness. So heavenslightwellness.com is the website. We're on YouTube and all our social media is all Heaven's Light Wellness. So, visit us, sign up for the newsletter. We do monthly themes. We don't like spam people. It's really a community that I'm hoping to create where people feel safe and have openness to the knowledge that gets brought out. You can also go on the website and sign up for any one of the workshops or to make an appointment to have a one-on-one with me, either for intuitive information, so you get to talk to your guardian angels and get some really great answers, or if you need some healing that doesn't involve medicine. I'm your girl.
Amazing. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time. And this was an absolute pleasure. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And
thanks, Gabby.
Until next time. Wow, what a tremendous conversation that was. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope you were able to find just as many nuggets of wisdom as well as actionable steps to build connections in the spaces all around you. This is an extremely grassroots production, so thank you to my dear friend Rowan for their commitment to this work by posting on social media and leading fantastic conversations with me on Patreon. So be sure to join that community on Patreon and enjoy the additional content. And thank you, of course, to my sweet and talented husband, DJ, for creating the music that is used in this podcast. Now, let's go out and create some connection in this world.